region, thank you. I'm Jen Vlahovis, there we are. I run the Midwest region for MediaMath. I will tell you, I'm a little nervous up here. I'm not a graceful person, and the idea that I have nothing to hold on to is a little scary, so work with me here. I'd like to spend the next 10 minutes or so hopefully redefining the term programmatic for you. You know, historically, programmatic has very much been the last mile of remnant inventory. It's been associated with direct response campaigns. In some cases, the word remarketing is synonymous with programmatic. And hopefully, a lot of you in the audience here have a little bit more of an evolved perspective on programmatic. But the reality is that those misconceptions are still very prevalent. So what I'm going to walk through today is a very quick case study on how MediaMath is helping marketers use technology and data to make smarter marketing decisions across their buys. And really, you know, those two components, technology and data, are very much integral to the definition of programmatic. But first, I'm going to take you back to May 2015. Brian Morrissey of Digiday, at one of the, I think it was one of the Digiday brand summits, was doing a dialogue with MediaMath about the ad tech space. And towards the end of that presentation, someone from the audience said, "Will all media go 100% programmatic?" And our answer initially was a knee-jerk reaction of no. And then we said, you know what, look, if the idea is that as marketers, we'll have the ability to use technology on every single digital impression that we run across channels that helps us inform some variability in that impression, then I think the answer is yes. And that was a lot of words, so I'll explain kind of what he was talking about at the time, which was, the example he gave was a guaranteed buy where we're decisioning on the creative. So you're buying impressions on a guaranteed basis, you know you're going to use them, but based on the data you have available to you on every single user, you serve a different creative against, you know, different users, again, on a guaranteed buy. And I bring up that example from over 2 years ago because, you know, that scenario is really being realized today, not just from a creative perspective, which was the example I just gave, but also very much from a data perspective. So I'll talk about a case study that we did with one of our retail clients, where we put a little bit of a programmatic spin on a guaranteed buy. So a little bit of background. Big retailer, they spend a tremendous amount in programmatic, but they also spent even more on direct buys with some of their premium publisher partners. They also have a tremendous amount of data. Data not only on online shopping behaviors and buying behaviors, but also a tremendous amount of data about in-store buying behaviors. So high-value buyers to them, category-specific buyers, cart values, all that kind of stuff. And we were trying to solve a couple of different challenges. The primary goal was to reach more of this first-party data audience. How do we get bigger reach against this audience that we know are very, very valuable to us, but still maintain the premium partnerships that we have with these publishers, and of course, drive a higher return on ad spend. And what I think is really interesting here, right, is, you know, I spent 5 years running the retail group at ComScore, and we'd go in and we'd talk to retailers, and I'd say, tell me about your audience. And, you know, especially coming from a research perspective, they'd say, oh, you know, she feels powerful when she gets good deals, and she likes, you know, she really loves fashion, but, you know, she also likes to know that she's saving money for her family. And I'd say, great, she sounds awesome. You know, how do you reach her online? We target women 18 to 34. You know, okay. And again, you know, in this space, the reality is that proxies will still be part of what we do, right? It's hard to find that woman online as defined in that way. But in this scenario, we didn't have to use a proxy. We didn't have to use you know, a demographic range. We had the people that we wanted to use, and so that's kind of what we did. And so all we really did here was instrument a direct guaranteed buy with kind of a subset of those premium publishers that they had worked with historically. We used rising star units on the sites, and basically we did, you know, what you would think of with a guaranteed buy: fixed budget, fixed CPM. I'll talk about the fluid timing in a minute because we actually changed our tune a little bit into the test here. But ultimately what we did was we added this decisioning rule on top of the buy that prioritized the retailer's first-party data, right? So instead of buying every impression that premium publisher gave them, the retailer said, no, I only want to buy the impression if it's one of these folks in my first-party data set. And I use the word prioritized rather than guaranteed specifically because ultimately we started this test saying, you know what, look, let's say we bought 20 million impressions just for example purposes. Let's see how long it takes us to hit 100% of those 20 million impressions, with this first-party audience. And then after a while we said, look, it's a big audience. We don't think it's going to take that long, but why don't we kind of flip it on its head a little bit and say, let's do a month-long campaign, 20 million guaranteed impressions, and it wasn't 20 million, I'm just using them as an example, and let's see what overlap we can get, right? Before and after, what kind of overlap can we get against that first-party data within that month-long time frame? And the results were phenomenal. When we compared the results of this programmatic guaranteed direct deal to the results from those exact same publisher partners with these historical direct buys, we saw that we hit 14 times more of that first-party data audience. We were 7 times more efficient in serving impressions against that audience, and we were 6 times more cost-effective in hitting that audience. And the revenue generated from that audience was about 5x. So I realize this is a ton of data that I just threw at you, but if you think about it from top to bottom, what this is really saying is that, from the 14x perspective, we were more effective in finding the audience, right, and hitting more of that, uniques within this audience set. The second bullet down, we're more effective in serving impressions against that audience, right? So if you think of the first bullet as uniques, the second is very much about the impressions. The third is about the cost of those impressions to the retailer, and the last, obviously, is very much about revenue. And so, we learned a couple things through this test, one of which was, both sides were happy. I hate to use the word win-win, but it was a win-win. And that, the publisher got what they wanted. They got this guaranteed buy with one of their big partners that they'd been working with for a very long time. And the retailer got what they wanted. Better reach against that first-party audience, obviously much better results in terms of the revenue generated from the test. And so we're doing a lot more of these types of deals, not just with these publisher partners, but with larger ones as well. And while I just overwhelmed you with a tremendous amount of data, I'd absolutely be willing to talk to anybody if I have time, and then offline as well, about the data. But I do hope that I've helped provide maybe a new perspective on what programmatic means, but also what it can bring to your organization. And that's, this programmatic guaranteed direct, oh my God, that's a mouthful, is just one kind of buying type that can be executed and instrumented programmatically. And at Media Math, that's really what we're striving to do, right, is through our technology and through our partnerships in the ecosystem, build kind of one connected source to provide access to all addressable media across channels to ultimately deliver more individualized messages. And because of the personalization with those individualized messages, deliver messages that resonate much more strongly with customers, and as a result, yield much stronger results.
Great. We have time for about one question, if anyone has one.
Hello.
Hi.
Without going into too much detail, what was maybe just a couple of the key variables in that first-party data set that you really relied on? Was it like email, or how did you know that those were the customers that you really wanted to hit from what the retailer provided you?
In this case, it was buying behavior. So it was in-store buying behavior, right? They knew on an anonymous basis who was spending the most in their store, right? Spending the most on business units and categories that were the most profitable to them. Who maybe had joined the loyalty program, who had really high cart values or frequency of visits. So all of those types of factors went into the different segments within the first-party data set that we targeted and tried to reach. But it was mostly buying behavior. It was mostly buying and spend behavior that we used.
All right. Any other questions? All right. I think we're just about out of time anyway. Thank you.
Thanks.
Jennifer.